The knock came at exactly 6:30 p.m. on a Friday. Had just settled into my favorite armchair at my mountain home in Evergreen Pines. The wind whispered through the trees outside, the scent of pine mingled with melting snow, and a fresh mug of hot chocolate steamed in my hand. After a brutal week of deadlines and back-to-back meetings, I was ready for silence. No city noise, no drama, just the solitude of my retreat. Then the knock. Firm, purposeful. I frowned and set down my mug. I wasn't expecting visitors. That was the whole point of buying this property. No one just dropped by in Evergreen Pines. I pulled open the door and froze. Standing on my porch was Eleanor Thompson, the newly elected HOA president. Her signature pearl necklace shimmered beneath the outdoor lantern, and her tailored blazer looked laughably out of place in the rugged mountain air. She wore the expression of someone who thought authority was her natural perfume. Behind her stood two men I vaguely recognized from the last HOA meeting, tall, forgettable clipboard types. "Good evening," I said, forcing politeness. "Is everything all right?" Eleanor didn't smile. "I've just been elected president of the Evergreen Pines Homeowners Association," she said in a clipped tone. "We're conducting property inspections to ensure compliance with community standards." Before I could respond, she stepped forward and pushed past me into the living room. "Excuse me?" I said, trailing behind her. I don't recall agreeing to any inspection. "Emergency protocol," she answered flatly, scanning the space. Like a real estate appraiser. "We've had reports of unauthorized renovations. We're doing a sweep." Her gaze drifted to the large windows overlooking the valley, then beyond, to the woods behind my home. "Beautiful view," she commented. Absently, "Is that your guest cottage I see through the trees?" My stomach tightened. "Yes, it's a private guest house. I renovated it myself. It's for my parents when they visit from Florida." "Perfect," Eleanor said with a predator's smile. "The HOA will be using that space for our quarterly meetings while the community center undergoes renovations." I blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "It's stated in the HOA bylaws," she replied, pulling a thick binder from her oversized bag. She flipped to a highlighted section. Bylaw 16.4. The association reserves the right to utilize suitable private spaces for community functions when public facilities are unavailable. The man with the glasses nodded. "Standard protocol. Temporary use only." I stared at the page. Something felt off. "I've read the bylaws. That doesn't sound right. It was amended last year." "Notices were sent," Eleanor said sharply. I thought back to the stack of HOA mail I'd mostly ignored. Was something important buried in there? "Even so." "My guest house isn't a public venue," I said. "It's a personal space with my family's belongings. It's not suitable." Eleanor's expression hardened. "We'll need the keys by Monday. The first meeting is scheduled for Wednesday at 7 p.m. We expect the space to be cleared and ready with seating for 12. The second man chimed in, still nodding. "We can help move any personal items to temporary storage." My jaw tightened. "I'm not giving you my keys. That space isn't for public use." Eleanor stepped closer, her voice low. "This isn't a request. The bylaws are legally binding. Refusing constitutes a violation." "Then I guess I'm in violation," I said, walking to the door. "Now, unless you have a warrant, I'd like you to leave." She snapped the binder closed and pulled a sheet of paper from her coat pocket. "Here's the formal request. You have 3 days to comply before fines are assessed." They exited my house with military precision. As they reached the end of my driveway, my neighbor James strolled by, his golden retriever leading the way. He watched the trio get into a black SUV. When they drove off, he approached my porch. "I see you've met Queen Eleanor," he said grimly. "She wants my guest house." "For HOA meetings," I said, still stunned. Claims it's in the bylaws. James let out a soft whistle. That old trick. She can't just demand to use private property, right? James looked around as if checking for spies. The Millers told her no when she asked to use their pool for a summer event. Within a month, they got hit with a dozen violation notices. Garbage, bins, lawn length, barbecue smoke. Eventually, they gave up and moved. My stomach sank. You're serious? She's a menace, and she's clever about it. Always hides behind bylaws and emergency clauses. He paused. You're not the first to stand up to her, but if you're not careful, you'll be the next to go. He tugged his dog's leash. Gently. Document everything. Every conversation. Every notice. She plays dirty. The next morning, my kitchen table was buried in HOA paperwork. I brewed a strong pot of coffee and sat down with highlighters, sticky notes, and an unhealthy amount of frustration. After 2 hours of parsing legalese, I found bylaw 16.4, and James had been right, it didn't say what. Eleanor claimed it clearly stated that homeowners may volunteer private space for community use in the event of a facility disruption. It must be voluntary and compensated with a written agreement. There was no clause about forced access, no emergency override, no authority to seize property. Eleanor had lied boldly. My phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Mr. Warren? This is Councilwoman Deirdre Walsh. I understand you're having some issues with your homeowners association. I frowned. How did you? Eleanor Thompson called this morning. Said a homeowner is refusing to cooperate during a temporary crisis. There's no crisis. She wants to commandeer my guest cottage. There was a pause. I'm not involved in HOA decisions, but Eleanor has improved property values in all the communities she manages. She manages more than one? Oh yes, her company oversees several HOA boards across the Evergreen Range. Something clicked. Councilwoman, do you have documentation on the community center renovations she mentioned? I'm not sure. I should go. Just try to stay cooperative. It's for the good of the neighborhood. The line went dead. I grabbed my coat. I drove straight to the Evergreen Pines Community Center. The parking lot was empty. The building was intact. No signs of construction. No scaffolding, equipment, or posted permits. I peeked through a side window. Tables and chairs were neatly stacked. Lights off. Nothing had changed. I took photos from every angle. When I returned home, an orange sheet was taped to my door. Violation notice infractions. Improper fence height. Unauthorized bird feeder. Non-compliant mailbox color. Failure to comply with community. Space request. Fine. $250 day. I tore it down with shaking hands. Across the street, Eleanor's SUV was parked outside James's house. Through the window, I saw her arguing with him. I called Sophia. She's escalating. I told her. Sophia didn't hesitate. Don't pay a cent. Don't hand over keys. I'll send you a cease and desist letter template. We meet tomorrow. Westlake Cafe, 10 a.m. sharp. As we hung up, Eleanor walked out of James's house, glaring in my direction. She raised her phone and took photos of my yard. I raised mine and took photos of her. That night. I didn't sleep. At midnight, headlights swept across my ceiling. I peered through the blinds. Eleanor, with the same two men, creeping around the edge of my property. I grabbed my phone and started filming. The war had begun. The next morning, I arrived early at Westlake Cafe, clutching a folder thick with documents, violation notices, and printouts of HOA bylaws. The lake outside was glassy and still, reflecting bare trees and gray skies. I waited, sipping a bitter black coffee, watching each customer who came in. But Sophia didn't show. After 30 minutes, I texted her .me at Westlake. Everything okay? The reply came almost instantly. Sophia, meeting postponed. Eleanor called my office claiming you agreed to settle. Said you authorized her as your rep. She's playing hardball. New location, James's workshop on Pine Trail. Go now. I bolted out of the cafe, heart racing. As I navigated winding roads, a silver SUV appeared in my rearview mirror. Eleanor. She stayed close. Too close. I made 2 sharp turns onto gravel backroads. At the 3rd turn, she was gone. James's workshop was a converted barn hidden behind tall pines, secluded and quiet. I parked behind it as Sophia instructed. Inside, the tension was immediate. Sophia was there, standing by a workbench with a laptop open. James stood beside her, arms crossed. Around the room were 3 more neighbors I barely knew. Margaret, the elderly woman who walked her corgi at dawn. Derek, a quiet man who always wore headphones and collected rare books. And Sarah, a reserved accountant who lived 2 streets down. James closed the door behind me. You're not alone in this, he said. She's targeted all of us. Sophia stepped forward, holding a folder. Eleanor tried impersonating you to my legal assistant. When that didn't work, she threatened to report me to the state bar for interfering in HOA business. She can do that? I asked, stunned. She can try, Sophia said coolly. But the attempt shows how desperate she is. This isn't overzealous rule enforcement. It's fraud, and it's organized. Margaret, despite her frail frame, spoke with force. 3 months ago, she demanded to inspect my garden shed. Said it violated the fence line. I let her, just to get her off my back. A bitter smile. A week later, I found strangers using it, storing furniture. Eleanor said it was community overflow storage. I objected, and suddenly I had violations. For my bird bath, my gnomes, and my wind chimes. $1,200 in fines. Derek added, she told me my workshop needed a safety inspection. I refused. Then one day I came home and found half the space filled with boxes. I moved them, and the next day, I got cited for removing community equipment. She claimed I had agreed in a neighborhood poll. Which never happened, Margaret said. It's not just us, Sophia said, clicking through photos on her laptop. Eleanor is running the same scam across at least a dozen communities. I traced her company Silver Range Community Management registered under a Delaware shell corporation. She turned the screen to face me. She's been using outbuildings, guest houses, and even tool sheds to run short-term rentals, Airbnb VRBO, all under fake homeowner names. Sarah passed out folders. We've started documenting everything. Camera footage, listings, screenshots, screens from rental sites. We're building a case. James pointed to a corkboard with a map of Evergreen Pines and red pins stuck across. We call ourselves the Evergreen 12. There's more of us now, but 12 is where it started. He showed me a printed Airbnb listing. Title: Rustic Writer's Retreat with Valley Views, Private Access. Host: L. Archer. That's your cottage, Sarah said. I looked closer. The listing had 5 glowing reviews. Renters had been using my property for weeks without my knowledge. She's already claimed your space, Sophia said softly. It's not about community meetings. She already has guests lined up for next weekend. My hands shook. We'll bait her, Sophia said. Create a fake listing, something too tempting to pass up. If she reposts it as her own boom, wire fraud, identity theft, rental fraud, illegal occupancy, she'll fall for it, Derek said. She's greedy. She thinks no one can touch her. 2 days later, we struck. Sophia created a listing under the name E. Delaney, offering my guest house as a quiet author's hideaway, photos, pricing, everything fabricated. Within 36 hours, a duplicate listing appeared under a new host. C. Winton, Eleanor's frequent alias. We had her. Meanwhile, James and I visited the so-called renovated community center again. Still no work, no construction permits, no tools, no workers, no changes. I posted a video to a secure shared drive, narrated with dates, timestamps, and a summary of Eleanor's false claims. Sarah filed a FOIA request with the county to confirm there had never been a renovation permit filed. It was all fake. The real reason the community center was unavailable? So Eleanor could justify stealing other people's property for rentals. We'd built a full dossier, 82 pages long. Sophia made contact with a state-level real estate investigator, already pursuing fraud cases involving HOAs. We've got what they need, she said. They've been watching her company, but lacked property-level proof. We just gave them a smoking gun. It all happened faster than we expected. Thursday morning, I awoke to the sound of tires on gravel. 6 black SUVs, unmarked. Sophia texted me one word: showtime. I stood by the window as state agents exited their vehicles and approached Eleanor's front door. When she answered, her face was pure theater confusion, feigned innocence, disbelief. Then came the badge flash. The warrant. Cuffs. The agents entered her house and emerged minutes later with boxes, phones, binders. The arrest made the evening news. HOA president arrested in multi-county fraud operation. Authorities say she profited off private property rentals. Without consent, within days, her empire began crumbling. Renters came forward. Neighbors in other towns called James and Margaret, sharing their own stories of intimidation and abuse. At our next meeting in the barn, someone brought wine. We toasted quietly, still shaken but victorious. Feels like the end, Sarah said, sitting back with a smile. I hope it is, James replied. I'm tired of looking over my shoulder. So was I, but later that night, as I stood on my back porch under the stars, my phone buzzed. Unknown number message. You think it ends with Eleanor? She was just the face. We were the operation. Attached was a photo me, taken from the edge of my property earlier that day, waving to James. Then came the knock. 6:30 p.m. again. I didn't open the door right away. 6:30 p.m. sharp. The knock was calm, not rushed, not frantic. I stood at the window, heart pounding, peering through the narrow sliver in the curtains. No one was on the porch, no cars in the driveway, just the fading light of evening and the stillness of snow-covered trees. Another knock. Firmer this time. I crept to the door and opened it an inch. No one. But there, tucked under the doormat, was a sealed envelope. My name handwritten on the front. Inside was a single sheet of paper. You exposed the figurehead. The board is still intact. Watch your all eyes. No signature. No return address. No print. Just that message and the photo again. Me and James, chatting by his mailbox. They had been close. Too close. I forwarded everything to Sophia within seconds: photo, letter, the time it was delivered. She called me immediately. Do not go outside alone, she said. And don't assume Eleanor acted independently. This is bigger than her. I could hear her typing furiously. She worked with 2 financial backers I found listed in silver. Ranges annual filing names that don't exist on paper anywhere else. One traces to a development firm in Utah with 3 other HOA management branches. The other is linked to a PAC that donates to property law lobbying groups. I swallowed. You think it's corporate? I think it's organized, she replied. Structured. Coordinated across states. Eleanor was just one node in a web. A pause, and someone in our circle is likely feeding them updates. I froze. You think there's a mole? I think you need to stop trusting everyone. At the next Evergreen 12 meeting, tension was thick. Margaret brought cookies, as always, but no one touched them. James looked rattled. Derek kept checking his phone. Sarah, usually calm and composed, kept scribbling in her notebook and avoiding eye contact. Sophia laid out the message on the table. Someone knew we'd meet here tonight. The note was delivered minutes before this meeting was announced in the group chat. The group fell silent. Which means, Sophia continued, we have a leak. James stood. I say we check everyone's devices. Look at apps, messages, timestamps. See who's been communicating outside the group. No, Derek snapped. That's not going to help. If there's a traitor here, they'll cover their tracks. Unless we flush them out, Margaret said quietly. Set another trap. Everyone. Turn to her. We feed a false update. Something they'll be desperate to act on. See what happens. Sophia nodded slowly. Exactly what I was thinking. The next day, we planted the bait dot in a private chat thread. James accidentally mentioned that Sophia had submitted an updated dossier to a federal investigator and would be meeting them at a remote ranger station just outside town on Friday. Night. The bait was set. Nothing was filed. No meeting planned. We waited. Friday came. At 9 p.m., Sophia's burner phone buzzed an alert from a motion sensor camera she'd placed at the ranger station. Car had arrived. Unmarked. Lights off. 2 men stepped out, one carrying a tablet, the other a long flashlight. They scanned the woods and checked the doors of the ranger station. Clearly looking for someone, they weren't from town. Sophia forwarded the footage to the state investigator working the HOA case. Within hours, the state launched an emergency. Trace and link the license plate to a private investigations firm out of Nevada, one specializing in surveillance and recovery operations for corporate real estate clients. Paid for by Silver Range Community Management. We'd found them, but it was just the beginning. The investigator called Sophia the next morning. His voice was sharp, urgent. What you uncovered, it goes deeper than rental fraud. There's a network of shell companies across 5 states, all managing HOAs, all exploiting property owners through fraudulent amendments and weaponized enforcement. He took a breath. And Eleanor's name shows up in 12 other communities, all using identical tactics: takeover, amendment, intimidation, rental conversion, fines, and forced sales. Forced sales. It all clicked into place. That's why families had moved so quickly. Why violations piled up for some and not others. Why homes were mysteriously bought in cash after residents fled. Evergreen Pines wasn't just her playground. It was a pipeline, part of a larger scheme to destabilize neighborhoods, force out owners, and profit from the vacuum. The syndicate had dozens of Eleanors. We'd just taken out one. Final scene. The Watcher in the Pines. The following week, I installed security cameras around my property, motion lights, reinforced locks. Peace, once promised by these mountains, now felt like an illusion. Still, I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. I had all eyes, evidence. A cousin with teeth sharper than any HOA president. But as I stood at the edge of my porch that Sunday night, watching the tree line sway in the wind, I felt it again. That sensation that someone was out there. Watching. Waiting. And then my phone lit up. New message. The board votes next month. You should consider relocating before then. We don't offer second warnings. Attached a live photo. My front porch. Taken from the woods. Again.